Thank you guys for tuning into Simply Dhol, your online resource for Dhol lessons. My name is Manvir, and this video will be your guide to learning Dhol. When I initially started learning Dhol, there were virtually no resources available, either by book or by video to learn the instrument. The way to learn back then was to have a student-master relation. It was like that for many years, and to a certain extent, it's still the same today. That's because it's difficult to distinguish the tone of a dhol or a tone of a strike just by reading. You often need to hear the sound before replicating what is being played. Although the dhol is becoming a more prominent instrument around the world, there's a definite shortage of skilled teachers. Even in cities where there are a large Indian population, you don't find too many people teaching the dhol. This may be because there hasn't been any resources made that outline what it means to be a dhol player, and the learning path may vary for those that play for different purposes. Historically, there's been a formalized approach to learning the dhol. And that is a time-honored relationship between a teacher and a student. That is an ustad and shagird that I mentioned earlier. This has been considered when putting this material together. This material is not intended to replace having a teacher because there's an infinite amount to learn and the dhol is ever changing. But instead, it is here to supplement the training that you receive. It provides alternative techniques, viewpoints, approaches to the subject that a student otherwise may not encounter. Personal, in-person lessons will always be the best in providing in-depth instruction, but using this material in conjunction with your current learning path will fast-track you to success, and I wish you the best on your learning journey. There are many languages around the world that you can speak and they all convey the same message. The average student is likely to have a teacher under which he or she is currently learning. Therefore, the chances of the terms that I use matching the material that your teacher uses is relatively small. An important point to note is that there's no objective benchmark for correct terminology. The terms that I use are representative and it is not assumed that these are the only ones. I'm right-handed, so the visuals that you see will be me holding the tili with my right hand. That is because I am right-handed. This is not to exclude people that are left-handed. If you are left-handed, simply reverse the hand references made. Dhol is a folk instrument, and from the time that it came into existence to now, a lot of stuff got lost. That's why you don't see too much material out there on the origin of the drum or how it's supposed to be played. What we do know is dhol players came from very specific ethnic communities. They came from the most marginalized groups in India. The dhol was one special thing that they had for themselves. It was their livelihood, a part of their particular minority culture. However, this is now changing. The urbanization and internationalization of Bhangra is reflected in that dhol players may now be from any strata of society. The goal of this material is not to seek the origins of dhol, but to place it in today's perspective. In the simplest of terms, we're going to look at the dhol as a musical instrument. In order to ground the material, we're going to look at the dhol as a double-headed drum rooting out of Punjab and how you commonly see it being played. I say Punjab because my playing started in the realm of Bhangra dhol and I was heavily influenced by it. Let's familiarize ourselves with parts of the dhol. In this section, we will learn what the parts are and what they're called. A dhol is essentially a trunk of a tree and the ideal woods that are selected are light and strong. Hardness or the density of the wood is important in determining the quality and the tone of the dhol. That is, and tali respectively. Mango wood is considered inferior, while tali is often the choice for the quality dhol. Wood containing a high percentage of dark wood is called kali tali, while a lighter wood is called chitti tali. The former is denser wood and is considered in superior quality. The dhol is a double-sided barrel drum. Each end is completely covered by animal hide or synthetic skin. These skins can be stretched or loosened with a tightening mechanism made up of either interwoven ropes or nuts and bolts. Tightening or loosening the skins changes the pitch of the drum. The stretched skin on one of the ends is thicker and produces a deep, low frequency sound, while the other thinner one produces a higher frequency sound. The treble side is considered to be the head of the dhol, whereas the bass side is considered to be the bottom. So when you place the dhol on the ground, it will stand up on the bass side. The heads have traditionally been made out of goat skin, but as the dhol has risen to international popularity, plastic and other artificial materials are starting to be used. There are several different types of dhol in the marketplace. You have bolted treble and rope bass, bolted bass and rope treble, all bolted dhols, and all rope dhols. The decorative tassels that you see on majority of the dhols are referred to as fuman. They are like the clothing of the dhol, which also assist in gripping the rings when tightening or loosening the heads. The dhol is played using two sticks, the daga and tili. The daga is typically made out of various wood types, while the tili is generally made out of bamboo. The daga is used for the bass side, while the tili, a lighter, more flexible stick, is meant for the treble. Unlike many North American instruments, one usually stands when playing the dhol. The two most popular ways to hold a dhol are 1. Over one shoulder, generally on that side of the treble hand, or 2. Across the back so the strap lies across the opposite shoulder. In either way, the dhol is tilted in a way that the bass side points up to a certain degree and the treble side points down. Now it's time for you guys to learn how to hold the sticks. Before we get into this, I would like to mention that there's no right or wrong way of holding the sticks. I'm gonna let Gurpreet Panu cover this section because he explains it excellently, and I will join you guys in the next section.
What's going on, guys? Today I want to go over some stuff about how to hold a dugout tidli properly, the proper way to strike, the proper technique. So let's start out with a tidli. The first thing that I always tell my students is you want to strike with the smooth part inside, and as far as placement in the hand, it's just preference. Some people like to hold it at the top, as some people like to hold it further down in the middle. I'm a little bit in between the middle and the top. But starting out with my thumb and my pointer finger, I'll kind of hold it like a pencil. Again, this varies from person to person. Some people like to hold it like this, but I'll take it from the actual tip of the pointer finger and the thumb and kind of grip it like a pencil. Moving to the middle finger, this is more so kind of for, I guess, support, you can say. This doesn't have much of a strike when actually playing. Moving on to the next finger down, this is a finger that you're going to primarily use for striking. When you strike, there are two different motions that you're supposed to use. One is actually in the finger and the other one's in the wrist. When you start increasing your speed and playing all these rolls and thirticates, it becomes a double motion at that point. Again, that's something that you're going to have to build up to. It doesn't come right off the get-go, but something that I always tell my students is you want to focus on keeping your hand still and using primarily that third finger, right? So you wanna keep your hand still as much as possible and focus on building that muscle and that finger and that muscle memory. That being said, again, this all varies person to person. You know, you gotta find your comfort zone. You gotta find what works for you. So whatever I'm saying, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. You know, this is the way I found that works for me, and this is what my style has taught me, and you know, it works for my students. So you know, you can try it out. If it doesn't work for you, then try different type of grips. That being said, I always tell my students where you want to place your finger when actually striking on that third finger. Some people like to come down here, right? Some people like to actually hold it at the very end. I prefer to hold it right here and just skim it. You know, you don't want to put too much effort into it. You don't want to put too much force. You don't want to create a slapping motion at that point, right? You want to just keep it a clean strike. So that's primarily how I hold my tidli. Going on to the daga, I've seen people hold it like this. I hold it like this. You know, I just have one finger actually holding it in. These two fingers are pretty relaxed. And then you have your pointer finger and your thumb right here, and they just kind of hold it almost like the tidli on the other side. You want to keep it loose. You don't want to keep your arms locked. You don't want to keep your forearms locked. It's gonna cause you to tense up. You want to keep both hands actually as loose as possible. That being said, when you keep it loose here, it kind of keeps this motion back and forth. It keeps it nice and loose. It keeps it easier for you. Moving on to the strike, the example I give my students is the doorknob example. For instance, if you're holding a doorknob, you want to use this motion for the strike. Commonly, I see amongst a lot of brand new Dhol players, they like to use this motion, this jerky motion, or they like to use their whole arm. That's wrong. You want to try to keep it in the wrist and this turning motion right here. All right, so that's something that you want to focus on. Once you get those fundamentals down, you know, then you can start moving on to the beats. Very good practice for actually working on your technique and the grip is playing na ge ge na ge ge na ge ge na. You know, that's something that you can use for speed, volume, technique, and it's a very good exercise for even just warming up. And I'll demonstrate that right now. So commonly when you want to practice, try to focus on these details. Again, it varies person to person. Try to find your comfort zone. Try to find the point where it works best for you and just stick to it. All right, guys, now we're going to work on the strike and actually where the placement of the tidli hits on the actual head. Starting with the tidli side, the treble, we're going to go ahead and show you where you're supposed to strike. Typically, when you want to strike, you want to use this much of the surface area of the tidli. Again, it varies situation to situation. If you're trying to generate volume, obviously the more surface area that you use, the greater the volume is going to be. Obviously, when playing with a singer, you don't want to overpower it, so you don't want to generate too much volume. At that point, you can kind of play on the tip. All right? You want to focus on actually hitting on the canal. Again, I've explained this in a previous video. Manvir will provide it in the link below. But you want to focus on hitting on the rim. You want to focus on a nice clean strike where the Dhol actually gives you a nice ring. A lot of people, when they play, the misconception is, oh, like, dhol is supposed to be a loud instrument. It's supposed to be a bunch of ruckus, and they want to hit it in the middle and kind of create this slapping motion. You don't want to do that. You want to keep a nice, clean ring. Again, I'm using a greater portion of the tidli. All right? You can tell I'm striking right on the edge. Now moving to the daga side. For this one, again, you want to strike as much as possible in the middle. You want to keep a nice clean strike. Again, try to keep that motion with the doorknob. For this, you want to kind of focus on using this portion of the daga. All right? All right, now when you're playing closed, the misconception is that you want to try to use this portion of the daga to actually play closed as well. A lot of people hit like this. It's wrong. You want to actually use the tip. Now you got to be careful. You can't angle it too much where you're going to actually puncture the head of the drum, right? So you just want to give it enough angle just to give you that closed sound. So again, you want to use this much and create that closed sound. All right, so just to give you an example.
As opposed to a system of written notation, Indian percussionists typically use a vocabulary or syllables to represent the patterns that they play. These words are intended to mimic the sounds that come from the drum. Each stroke or combination of strokes has its own word or set of words. It is possible to look at these like the words of an alphabet. Generally, these words are the first thing that a student learns when learning a new composition. There are two general qualities that characterize the strikes of a dhol. One is a non-resonant stroke, which is referred to as being closed, while the other is to have the stroke resonate, which is known as open. The bol is the Indian system of mnemonics. The term is derived from the Hindi word bolna, which means to speak. The bols that we will be using in this material are as follows. Ge is an open bass strike. Ge is a closed bass strike. Na is a treble strike. Da is a combination of an open bass strike and treble strike. And din is a combination of a closed bass strike and treble strike. There are several more notes that we can cover, but this is all you guys need to know for now. In this section, we're going to look at the different ways that you can strike the sticks. The motions of the sticks are the secret to great dynamic playing. They should be practiced to ensure that you have the sticks at the correct heights to achieve the dynamic levels you are looking for. Now, let's take a look at these motions. The first motion that I would like to discuss is the tap stroke. The tap stroke is meant for playing at low volumes. You start low and end low. The next strike is the full stroke, which is the opposite of the tap stroke. It's meant for loud volumes, and the way you want to achieve the strike is by starting far away from the drum and ending far away from the drum. The next strike is pretty cool, and that's the downstroke. With the downstroke, you start in the same position as a full stroke, but instead of bringing the sticks to the original position, you finish close to the head. Keep in mind that you can't play two downstrokes back to back. What the downstroke typically does is it sets you up for a lighter stroke, such as a tap stroke or an upstroke. The upstroke is the opposite of a downstroke. You start low, but finish high. I've created an entire video on these motions, so if you want a better understanding, I'll have a link to that in the description box below, along with other useful videos. More often than none, what I'm playing might sound different than what you're playing. This all lies in dynamics and articulation. That is, the clarity in production of successive notes. Let's start with dynamics. Dynamics refers to the variation of loudness between strikes, and it's a measurement of volume. Keep in mind that there's no real way of measuring dynamics as it's relative to what's going on around you. The best way to practice dynamics is by playing to music, and that's when it's most transparent. Further, we can use articulations to express our ideas on dhol by changing the sounds that we're playing. Articulation is how you approach a note. That is, by adding accents or ghost notes, which bring rhythms to life. Accents are probably something that you've already played before. They're basically notes that stick out in the groove. You essentially want to play a note louder so that it stands out. Ghost notes, on the contrary, are played at very low volumes. They add rhythmic value, but there's no discernible pitch when being played. I can talk about motions like dynamics as much as I want, but until you see it or hear it, it probably won't even make sense to you. Let's take a look at the Chaal rhythm that everyone eagerly wants to play when they get on the dhol. The Chaal rhythm consists of 8 individual strikes. Da, na, 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 da, da, na. If we take it at face value, it sounds very monotone. To get it to sound from da, na, 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 da, da, na, to da na 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 da da na da na 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 da da na. You have to take a look at what motions are applied to the sticks. What we're gonna do is break down the Chaal by looking at each individual strike. The first thing that you want to do is understand how you need to strike the treble side. Each na alternates between downstrokes and upstrokes. You have 4 downstrokes and 4 upstrokes. The next thing that I want you to understand is where the bass strikes lie. If we were to label the bowls 1 through 8, the bass strikes lie on 1, 6, and 7. We're going to start with just the first bass strike, and then we're going to add in number 7. Following that, I'll show you how number 6 comes in. The first da comes down on a downstroke, and then you follow the same motion of the tili that we just discussed. The da that lands on number 7 also happens to be a downstroke. This is illustrated as follows. When playing the da on number 6, it's a little bit trickier because it's a ghost note. It's played lighter than the other das, and you do this by playing an upstroke. Allow me to show you how this is played. Now that you know how to play a rhythm, you want to introduce that rhythm to an audience before it comes in. You do this by playing a Thora, which is a fill or an introductory piece. The most commonly played Thora is din gena, din gena, din. Not only are we adding new bowls, but we're also going to be adding new motions. When playing this Thora, understand the motions of each individual bowl. The dins come down on downstrokes, the gays are played as tap strokes, and the nas are played as upstrokes. One thing that I would like to mention is when you use this Thora to start a piece, one usually plays a na following the last din to make it a complete 8 beats. This makes a transition from fill to rhythm almost seamless. When you use this Thora to end a piece or a sequence, one normally finishes at the last din. I'll show you how this Thora is played on its own, and then I'll play it in a sequence to help you guys better understand its application. Now that you guys understand how to play your first rhythm or fill, let's briefly discuss theory. Let's start with the question, why should you learn basic terminology or theory? The first reason is that you get a better understanding of what you're playing. If you're playing a rhythm or a fill and you know why you're playing it, it's going to give you a better understanding of what you're playing in general. It's a lot easier for you to know what time value you are playing, what tempo you are playing, and what the time signature is. Secondly, you can communicate better to the musicians that are around you. Lastly, but not limited to, it helps speed up your own progress. Question. What is a bar and what does it represent? A bar is a measure of time. When you are playing in basic 4/4 time, you usually count 1, 2, 3, 4. Every 4 counts represents one measure. And this can change based off time signatures, but for now, we're gonna look at the basics and how they relate to Dhol. Most music is played in 4/4, also known as common time. Most of the material that you'll learn on this channel is in common time, and most modern and Western music is in common time. Now, let's discuss tempo. The tempo of a piece of music determines the speed at which it is being played. It is measured in beats per minute or BPM. The beat itself is determined by the time signature of that piece. When you are playing Dhol to a song or playing with another Dholi, there's gonna be a tempo around what you're playing. Most of the time, the tempo remains the same. Sometimes you see that someone's playing fast. That doesn't really mean that the tempo is fast. It just means whatever the other Dholi is playing fast. There's a little bit of a difference between tempo and speed. In relation to songs, how would one find the tempo of a song? Generally, when you are listening to a track and you start bobbing your head, that is usually the pulse of the song. The speed at which you are bobbing your head is usually the tempo. Learning about tempos can improve your playing in the following ways. Starting pieces at the correct tempo, maintaining consistent tempos throughout a performance, preventing yourself from speeding up, and playing accurately to click tracks or to music. The first thing to learn before getting to the lessons and exercises is the language of the Dhol itself. To get the maximum benefit, work on each example thoroughly by concentrating on the sound production and clarity. Only move up a speed when you feel it is really strong and clear at a slower tempo. Each rhythm has a few variations. Begin by practicing each of these separately and then move on to playing variations one after the other in a sequence, repeating each variation 1 to 4 times. Slowly build up the speed and then also memorize them. Avoid the temptation to play fast. The main concern for new students is not speed, but correct technique and producing the correct sounds. Any bad habits are adopted in the early stages of the learning process will be challenging to correct later. It's important to be patient, study the material, and practice efficiently. Remember, perfect practice makes perfection. If you are committed, you will be able to overcome any obstacles and learn the material on hand. In this material, I have given you an introduction to Dhol, basic theory, and the infamous Chaal rhythm. Although there's a lot of information to digest, there's still so much to cover. This is not designed to be an all-inclusive discussion on the subject, but instead your first steps in a long journey. The next thing for you to do is to practice. Try practicing to a metronome, without a metronome, practice to recorded music, and do anything to broaden your perspective on the subject. There's no substitute for practice and experience. So keep busy and I hope that you will progress in this instrument. Thank you guys for watching and I'll see you in future lessons.